Hey everyone, I'm Tax Pro, and today we are going to go over adding a new customer to QuickBooks Desktop. So this is going to be for QuickBooks Desktop Pro or Premier, and this is not for QuickBooks Desktop Enterprise, which is a different video. So this is the homepage when we first log in. This is the fake company ABC Construction LLC. The easiest way to navigate to adding a customer and managing customers is to go up here and go to Customer Center. This Customer Center is going to pop up all information as related to customers. So you'll see here we don't have anything listed in the left-hand menu. That is because we have no customers. So the first thing we're going to do is come up here and we are going to add a customer. When you click the drop down, you can either add a new customer, add a job, or add multiple customer jobs. A job is going to live underneath a customer, so customers can have multiple jobs, but a job is only going to be assigned to one customer. So we are going to add a customer today, and I will explain jobs later. We'll click New Customer, and then this is our customer setting. So when we add a new customer, the first thing we're going to do add their name. Do XYZ LLC. You can add an opening balance here. An opening balance is going to be if that particular customer owes you money. This is a brand new customer. They shouldn't owe you money yet. We can always add the customer and then do an invoice and get a balance on their account if you need to invoice them. This is going to look really similar to the QuickBooks Desktop Enterprise version. There's a few small differences, but for the most part, this is going to follow a very, very similar format. It's going to look almost identical. So we want to enter the company name. I'm going to say XYZ LLC. Then we can enter our contact here. So John Smith is going to be our first contact here, and he might be, the purchasing director. We can give him a phone number, an email address. You can fill all this contact information out here. You can have a work phone. You can have an email that all communication is copied to, a website, mobile, fax, other information here that you want to store. And then we can put in their address. So this first address on the left is where we're going to send invoices and bills. So let's say now if we are shipping to the same address that we are invoicing or billing to, we can use this to copy over that particular address to the ship to address. Or we can put in a completely different ship to address. We can name this, let's say that we have multiple warehouses that we're shipping to. And so this is potentially a little bit different than the bill to address. We're going to go ahead and enter a ship to address. You can add additional ship to addresses here. So maybe you have a customer that has multiple warehouses that you want to ship to or multiple store locations. You can have multiple warehouses here. So we could put in, an additional warehouse too. And so this is all just, made up addresses, but you can get the idea for how this works. Maybe we have multiple addresses that we may want to ship to, and then we can go in and we can toggle back and forth. We can also mark one as a default shipping address. Maybe we always send everything to warehouse 1. Occasionally we may have something for warehouse 2, but for the most part we want it to default to warehouse 1. So it's the basic customer information. Now we can go into their payment settings. We can assign this customer an account number, and then we can determine what their payment terms are. So when I drop down payment terms, these are all by default what is uploaded into QuickBooks Desktop. And I want to explain what these are because some of you may not be familiar with this 1% and 2%. So here where it says 1% 10, net 30, what that means is that if the customer pays within 10 days, that customer gets a 1% discount. However, if they're not going to pay within 10 days, that total balance is still due in 30 days from the date of the invoice. Okay, this 1% and 2%, giving the client a discount for paying on time helps with cash flow. So it encourages clients to go ahead and pay timely. The company, when we set up these kinds of payments, we know that we can afford to take a 1 or 2% hit, and that it's more beneficial for us to get the cash in sooner rather than later. Other payment terms that QuickBooks Desktop kind of comes preloaded with are going to be consignment, due on receipt, net 15, net 30, and net 60. And we can, always change these either on an invoice by invoice basis, or we can set different defaults for each customer. So I am going to give this customer a net 60 terms. I have a relationship with the salesperson, I've worked with them before, or the purchasing individual, I've worked with them before. I'm comfortable they'll pay me in 60 days. I'm going to set them a limit of $40,000. So I'm never going to extend more than 40. If they bill more than 40 on their account, they owe us a payment before the net 60. We can always set up, varying safeguards in there. So reducing the credit limit, although maybe the payment terms will be longer, that kind of thing. You can also create custom payment terms if you want to. So maybe we want this client to be net 45, or maybe we want to give them a 5% discount if they pay within 5 days. You can do all sorts of things. On price level, this happens when we have dynamic pricing in QuickBooks Desktop. So we might have certain customers that we want to provide different price levels to. And if you click on this little question mark, it'll give you some more details on how this works. But maybe we want to, have this customer, we think that they're going to be a large customer, so we're going to give them a pretty good price. Whereas smaller customers, we're not going to give them quite as low of a price because maybe we don't necessarily want to bid as hard for their business. So when you click on any of the question marks here within QuickBooks Desktop, it will pop up some helpful information for you. So here it is showing you how to set up and use advanced pricing. And this is going to use price rules that automatically change item prices on sales. It goes into turning it on, creating price rules, etc. So this can be really helpful if you want to have different pricing levels for different types of customers. Then we have our preferred payment method. So we can choose to, have American Express, or maybe we want them to pay us Visa. We can also store credit card information. Make sure if you're storing credit card information that you're following all legal guidelines for storing that information. You may be subject to some specific types of guidelines there. And then we can also turn on online payments. So if we have online payments, this customer can pay us either via credit card and or ACH through QuickBooks Online Payments or QuickBooks Payments. And it can help facilitate faster payment if they can just click a Pay Now button in the invoice. So we can turn this on, we can let them pay us via credit card or bank transfer. And I want to mention that a lot of this information is not required to set up a new customer. So what is required is we really just need the customer information, the name, essentially. We don't have to put a contact. We don't have to put contact information like the phone number, the address. That's not required to set up a new customer. This is a detailed setup of this particular customer. Sales tax settings. So in order to have all the information for sales tax, we have to turn on the sales tax in QuickBooks Desktop. I'm not going to go into that. I just want to mention that you can save sales tax information in the customer center for this particular customer. Benefit to doing that is making sure that you have all the documentation that you're supposed to have and you're following sales tax requirements. A lot of times you may have a customer who is exempt from you charging them sales tax because maybe they're going and they're reselling the product or something along those lines. In those instances, though, you still have to have documentation to where you have looked into whether or not that customer is actually exempt. They've provided you documentation showing you that they are actually exempt from filing sales tax. That information can be stored here in QuickBooks Desktop. Additional information allows you to store some information about where this customer came from and then some custom fields. So this customer type, we can track where did they come from, and are they retail, wholesale, are they a referral, do they come from an advertisement, and then we can also connect a representative to them. So I don't have any sales reps in here, but we could potentially put a variety of sales reps in here and connect that particular customer to a sales representative. You can also have some custom fields in this customer file, so we can track various things for this particular customer right in QuickBooks Desktop. And then we also can create jobs under the customer. Jobs is a whole separate conversation, a whole separate video that I'm going to go over at a later date in a different video. But you can have multiple jobs underneath the customer where we could track profitability for those particular jobs. Now, if you wanted to make the customer inactive, you can click this button right here, or this checkbox. It would be really odd for you to create a customer and then immediately make them inactive. That's not saying it doesn't happen. So then once we click OK, you'll see that this customer now lives in the customer center. And we can pull this customer up and we can have a lot of information for this particular customer. So you'll see here, we can pull transactions for this customer. We can filter it by transaction type and year. We can have contacts, multiple contacts at this customer. We can have to-dos for this customer. We can have notes on this customer, and we can look at emails that we've sent for this customer. So QuickBooks Desktop in this way kind of becomes a CRM or a client record management system. So we have a lot of things that we can keep within QuickBooks Desktop in this customer area, in this customer center. And once you add more customers, this will begin to populate. Hopefully that was helpful. If you could like and subscribe, I would greatly appreciate that. And I will see you guys in the next video.